What's up, guys? It's Droby Tech here, and we have the Moto G Stylus 2022. And let me tell you, I really wanted to like this phone. I wanted to love it. $299, you get a stylus, you get a big screen, a 90 hertz refresh rate. I wanted this to be awesome, but unfortunately, I think Motorola has cut way too many corners. And I've watched a lot of other reviews on this phone, and it seems like that is the theme of the reviews. Everyone's saying they're kind of disappointed in it. So when I was coming into my review, I was like, man, let me see if I can find the good in it and not just trash this phone like everyone else kind of has. But I'm struggling to. I'm struggling to not be upset with Motorola for releasing this with the specs they've released it with. Now, let's start off with the good, though, because I do think there are good aspects of this phone. It's not a terrible phone by any means. And to start with the good things, I would say, number one, the screen is actually pretty nice. This is a nice, vibrant screen that we have here. And for it being, IPS LCD, I think it's pretty good. It's not terrible. I would say the only downside is the viewing angles aren't fantastic, but they're not horrible either. And this is an IPS LCD, it's 90 hertz, it's a 6.8 inch screen, and it's coming in, again, at 1080p, which is nice because Motorola kind of has cheaped out on a lot of the other budget phones, putting 720p displays in there. I'm glad to see 1080p on this one, and the 90 hertz was kind of a surprise. I really didn't expect that. Now, for me personally, I went in and I changed the display rate to lock it to 90 hertz. Because this has a 5,000 milliamp hour battery, so I'm not too concerned about battery consumption. And I think, I almost just dropped the phone because this phone is humongous. I think the phone usually, out of the box, it's just set to auto, which is fine. And if you want to save the most battery, and still have the 90 hertz, that's probably the way to go. But personally, I'd rather just lock it to 90 hertz. And I'm sorry, wow. Okay, Oliver. That is, I guess I'm becoming Flossie Carter here. Okay, Ollie. No, Bubba. Oh. You know what? I'll let him go on the table. I just need to get like a bigger table. And I can try to copy Flossie Carter. No, so the 90 hertz I think is what people should just keep it at because this phone has a very big battery and I wouldn't be too worried about it. And the 90 hertz is nice. Again, for $300, this being a budget phone, I'm glad it has at least 90 hertz, which I think is plenty. I'm not the type of person that needs 120 hertz. I'm not the type of person that gets upset if it's not 120 or 144 and it's only 90. I think at least having 90 is good enough in my opinion. It smooths nice and it scrolls nice and smoothly. I can't speak today. It scrolls nice and smooth. I think 90 hertz looks good. I don't think you need the 120 or the 140. I think 144 is definitely unnecessary. But this is a nice phone as far as the screen and the refresh rate. I think Motorola did well there. I'm not complaining about that. The other thing I think Motorola did pretty darn good with for the price is the, if we could focus, the camera. The 50 megapixel camera that they put on this, the main camera, is actually very good. And I also think the ultra wide that they put on this, which doubles as a macro camera, was also pretty good. I was pleasantly surprised. I thought because of some of the shortcomings with this phone, I thought the camera was also going to take a step back, and I don't think it did, which I'm very thankful for. I think they actually did a good job with the camera on this. I don't think people will be upset. So again, you have a 50 megapixel main sensor at f1.9. You have an 8 megapixel ultra wide at f2.2. That also doubles as a macro camera, which we'll talk more about later, and a 2 megapixel depth sensor, which is what it is. That one was kind of just a throw-in. I would have been fine if it just had two cameras, honestly. And of course, you have the LED flash. And video is capped at 1080p, which I think is a bit of a bummer because the older Moto G Stylus that came out a little bit before this, not the Moto Stylus 5G, the original Moto Stylus that came out last year, had 4K video recording with the Snapdragon processor. So I'm a little bummed out that this one is capped out at 1080p. I just think that is a big limiting factor with some of the MediaTek chips that they're putting in these phones. You're not getting 4K. Is it the end of the world? No. And the video capture was at least smooth. Like, it was stable. Like, I think the stabilization was actually decent, even though it doesn't have optical image stabilization. The electronic stabilization was pretty good. You know, the mics are fine. It's perfectly fine 1080p video, but honestly, them limiting it to only 1080p using the MediaTek chip, I'm kind of bummed out by that. I think that they should have put a Snapdragon chip in here just for the reason of being able to do 4K alone with the camera. I think would have helped out greatly. But again, you have the 1X, you have the ultra wide, and you have the macro mode. And again, I thought the macro mode was actually pretty dang good. I will show you guys some samples. So this area, the camera, pretty good. Give you some nice options. You know, got the usual Motorola stuff, spot color. You know, it'll pick out one color to show you. The rest will be kind of black and white. I like that Motorola gives you the ultra res, so you can go the full 50 megapixels, which some phones aren't allowing, like the Pixel phones, which really bothers me about them. You cannot force it into the 50 megapixel mode, which I think is extremely stupid. If you're going to put a high res camera, at least let me choose to go into that mode. I'm fine with pixel binning most of the time, but if I want to go in and change it to the full megapixel mode, allow me to do that. Don't limit me and not allow me to do it. So I'm glad Motorola lets you do that even on their budget phones. The night vision, portrait, there's a pro mode. I appreciate that Motorola gives you a good amount for $300. This isn't too bad. A lot of, you know, past budget phones maybe didn't give you quite as much as far as the options were concerned. So I'm glad Motorola is giving you a pro mode and the full res mode. They're giving you some fun stuff to work with. It's not too bad. And I think the photo quality was pretty good. And what we'll do is we'll take a look at some of the samples right now. And this is a video test. All right, guys, so as you're looking at those samples, you'll notice one thing. In the daytime, the photos look pretty darn good. I think this is a pretty good camera for daytime photos. When we're looking at the you know, when the light starts going down, it's okay. It starts to kind of falter, and then when we get really into the low light photos, I think it does fall apart a little bit. The night vision is pretty good. Like, I'm glad that it has the night vision mode. As you can see here, this wasn't a super low light photo, but you know, it was nighttime inside the house. You know, not bad. Am I expecting the world out of a $300 phone as far as night photos? No, but as you can see here, this is a night vision photo with that mode turned on. It's not very good. It's this. I wouldn't even consider this really a usable photo. There's a lot of grain, multicolored grain too, which I haven't seen in a long time. That is something I noticed on a lot of older Moto phones, was that there's just splotches of color, like purple and green, and yeah, it's pretty noisy. You know, it's a bummer because I think they could have done better. And maybe if they had a better processor in here and took a little more time with it. Hello, Ollie. I think this could have been a bit better. You know what's funny, Ollie? In Flossie Carter's videos, White Shoes doesn't walk in front of the phone. You see what I'm saying? There you go. You got it. So I think overall in daytime photos, people will be pleased with this. I think it takes pretty darn good pictures. I was pleasantly surprised. Like I said, I thought it was going to be worse. I really did. I thought they were cutting back so much that this was going to be a problem. But even dynamic range was handled well. I thought the ultra wide was perfectly suitable for this phone. It's not amazing. It certainly takes a dip in quality in the ultra wide. But I think then it kind of redeems itself with the macro, because I think it's actually a pretty decent macro. This is one of the better macro cameras and is way better than the 2 megapixel macro cameras and 5 megapixel macro cameras that a lot of other budget phones have. So I would way rather have this one because, like I said, it's pretty decent. Like, it's not a bad macro camera. Look at that. Look at that bug. I think that's pretty good. So overall, the photos look good. Thank you, Ollie. The photos look good. I was pleasantly surprised. Selfie camera's fine. It's not great, I'll be honest with you. But I think it's perfectly suitable. It'll get people by. Again, some more macro. Yeah, it's pretty good. Like, I was surprised. And this was a lower light shot too. Like, we were inside, it was nighttime. You know, not really low lit, but still, you know, usually those shots with the macro cameras come out terrible because unfortunately most of the macro cameras on phones are just awful. But this one I think is pretty good. And I think Motorola is kind of pioneering the macro camera and giving us some really good ones. Which I was pleasantly surprised by. So I think this is pretty good. I think overall most people will be happy with the photo quality. Now the video quality, again, 1080p being capped at, I don't know. That's going to be up to you. If you don't mind 1080p video, it's perfectly fine 1080p video. Dynamic range isn't great in the video. I notice it's a little stuttery when you're moving, but it's stable. Like when you're walking, I can tell the electronic stabilization is doing its thing. I appreciate that they added that because it has no optical image stabilization. But being capped at 1080p, not having the best dynamic range, it's okay. I would not buy this phone for the video quality though. Also, there's no telephoto, so you know when you're zooming in, here's a zoom shot. Not very good. Not very good. It's fine. Like if you don't zoom in at all on the image, it's like okay, that's And then if you zoom in, it kind of starts to fall apart. There's not a lot of detail because there is no telephoto camera, so you get what you get. So I would give the camera and the screen, those would be my two pros of this phone. Those would be the areas where it does a really good job. A third pro, I would say, is the battery life. Probably in third place. It's not the maybe best battery life on the face of the earth, but I think it is very good battery life for $300. If we go to, where was it? I think I have it in my screenshots. Here was one of the days, 3 hours and 40 minutes of screen on time, and the phone was down to 65%. So, you know, I think you'll easily be able to get over 7 hours of screen on time with this phone. Now, mind you, I wasn't, you know, using the phone crazy heavily that day. I wasn't watching like a ton of videos. I wasn't gaming on it. So take it for what it is. I think it's perfectly suitable battery life for the average human. I think most people are going to be fine with this. 7+ hours of battery life, you should have no issue getting with this phone. Maybe more if you're a light user. If you're a heavy user to a moderate user, I'd say 7+ hours. If you're a light user, you can probably get way more. Yeah, so the 5,000 milliamp hour battery in here, very, very good, right? Ollie likes it too. Yeah, it's a good battery, Ollie. Okay. All right. So I'm glad they stuck that in here. It does make the phone a little heavier, but it's not like unwieldily heavy. I was actually surprised at the lightness of the phone, considering how big it is and how big that battery is. I was expecting it might be even heavier and be just like a brick like the iPhone 13 Pro Max, but it's really not that bad. And I'm the type of person that does not like heavy phones, but it comes in at 7.62 ounces. So that's not too bad. It's not horrible. And I think they actually evened out the weight pretty nicely with this phone. So it doesn't feel like it's heavy in just one spot on the top or the bottom. They did a nice job with it. You're getting a plastic build with this phone, which, we can start dipping into some of the cons. It does feel very plasticky. This is not going to trick you into believing that it is glass in any way, shape, or form. It is a plastic phone, which is fine. I don't really care, but I know a lot of people do care. You read a lot of reviews and people do complain about phones being plastic. I'm not one of those people. It's not a big deal to me, but I'm not going to lie. It does feel kind of cheap. Not the end of the world. I put a case on my phone. I know most other people do too. So is that going to be a big deal to you? I don't know. It is plastic though, and it's not going to trick you into thinking anything else. It is a very plasticky feeling phone. Other things to note that were kind of cons for me. Now, this is going to be surprising, but I actually do think the stylus was kind of a con. I don't think it's a great stylus. It's fine. Like it gets the job done. It's kind of like one of those, it's like a mesh and metal style. It's very thick. And obviously you're not going to get the latency times of a Galaxy Note, which nobody's expecting. So I'm not even going to sit here and talk about that. You do get some cool modes with it. It's fine. Here we go. Let's go to this dinosaur picture. What do I got to do here? I can fill certain colors. Okay. Oh, am I erasing? Yeah, you can you can use it. I was filling in white. That's why there was no color coming up. It's not super accurate. It's fine in a pinch. I don't know. It's kind of a throwaway on this phone. I wish there were more phones with a stylus, because really your only options are this and like a Galaxy Note. And that's a big price difference. There doesn't seem to be much in the middle, and I wish that there was. I wish there was more options. Motorola, put out a more expensive mid-range phone or flagship phone with a stylus. I know the Moto Edge 30 Plus, the new one that just came out, is going to have a stylus in the future, but it's not built in. And Samsung, you have no mid-range products that have a stylus. So your options are limited. You're either getting a really cheap phone or a super expensive phone. And it's fine though. It's a perfectly fine point and click stylus if that's all you need it for. Now, this wallpaper right here, I made with this phone, with this stylus, with the GoDaddy Studio app. So I made this whole wallpaper with it. Was it nice to have this? Yes. I'd rather have it than not. But again, it's just not that exact. And we're going to get into the next con with this phone for me, which is, unfortunately, the MediaTek processor that's in it. So this has the MediaTek Helio G88. It's an octa-core processor. The phone has Android 11, which is also kind of a bummer. And it has 6 gigs of RAM. Now, I'm not the type of person that just goes around hating MediaTek processors. There's actually a lot of MediaTek processors that are very good, and they work perfectly fine. But in this case, I think Motorola kind of cheaped out too much. This phone stutters and lags and freezes, and apps close far too much. I have had so many apps just freeze, and I've had to close the app and reopen it for it to work again. It happens constantly throughout the day, and that gets really old. Sometimes scrolling is stuttery, even though it has a 90 hertz screen. I just feel like Motorola should have put a Snapdragon processor in this, or a better, newer MediaTek processor, because the MediaTek is just too limited, and it has 6 gigs of RAM, but I don't notice it. Like, a lot of times this phone just feels like a phone with 4 gigs of RAM. And I think it's just solely because of the MediaTek processor that they chose to use in this. And that is a real bummer, because I wanted to love this phone, but I've just had so many issues with so many apps. They just don't work. I've had a couple issues with Android Auto, but nothing major. For the most part, Android Auto worked fine in my car. I had a couple times where I couldn't hear the voice. I was trying to listen to a voicemail and I couldn't even hear it. That only happened with this phone. So I'm just really bummed out by the fact that Motorola chose to put the MediaTek Helio G88 in this. It is my #1 biggest problem with this phone. Here's what I'll say. Is the phone usable? Yes. Are you going to be pleasantly surprised by this budget phone on how speedy it is and how fluid and how well apps work? No, you're not. I would say if you got a Pixel 4a or something in that, price range of $350, $400, one of the Pixel budget phones, you're going to love it. It's phenomenal. It feels like a flagship phone 90% of the time. You're really only going to notice a difference when you're trying to game or video edit. This phone is not a Pixel in that sense. You feel like you bought a $299 phone. You will feel it every time you open an app. And we're in. Everything takes a little too long to open. Again, is it unbearable? No, I've been using this phone for a week now, and it's not unbearable. I've been able to use it. I've had documents signed at my job with the Stylus, which I'm glad that it has, because I actually do utilize the Stylus for signatures. It's cool that it has that, even though it's not a great stylus. It's a stylus. I guess it's better than nothing. I've been able to use it. It works. It's just like, let's go in here. And let's go here. We'll type in NHL, and we're loaded up. Everything just takes a little bit too long, in my opinion, and I have to blame that MediaTek processor for that. Let's see. Okay, I think it's fully loaded now. It's up to you guys. If you can see the speeds there, it's not atrocious. It's not unusable. It's just at no point will you feel like, man, I can't believe this is only a $300 phone. It's amazing. No, you're not going to feel that way. You're going to feel like it's a $300 phone. It really feels more like a $200 phone, in my opinion. I don't even think this price is accurate. I think Motorola should have offered this at $200 or $250. I think it would have been a much, much more appealing deal. But at $300, I think they're asking a lot for this thing. And I'm bummed out. I really wanted to love this. Even when I was using the GoDaddy Studio app to make, which I make a lot of wallpapers with this app. It's actually a really awesome app. As I was using this, right? I was, we can just go into one of these other ones that I've created. It was stuttering and it was freezing, and I had to close the app and reopen it. And thankfully it saved everything I did. But when I'm making these wallpapers, it actually takes me a pretty long time. So if if it freezes, it's really frustrating to then have to, to lose everything possibly, or to just start over. Thankfully, I didn't have that completely happen, but I did have to restart the app multiple times, and it was just a little laggy. And I could tell it was struggling to keep up. So doing something like photo editing was actually difficult for this processor. Making a wallpaper like I do, which, it has layers and stuff. And as you can see, this doesn't even have that many layers, and it was still struggling to do this. So one of the biggest reasons I was excited to use the Stylus, it kind of let me down with this phone in particular. So that was a bit of a bummer. It's okay. It's just okay, and that's all I can say about this phone. I do not think that it is worth $300. I think if you can get the phone for cheaper, if you can get it for $200, I think it's a much better deal. I think you'll be happy with the cameras. You'll be happy with the screen. You're going to be disappointed with the MediaTek processor, though, if you buy this for $300. It's just, I actually think the Moto G Stylus 5G and the old Moto G Stylus that has a Snapdragon processor, are probably better, and they're cheaper, in my opinion. I don't know that they'll have better cameras necessarily, because I actually was pretty impressed with these cameras, although they were pretty good. But I'm just a little bummed out with Motorola for releasing this phone with the processor they did. I'm going to leave it at that, guys. It's not a horrible phone. It's up to you. If you want to try it out and buy it, I mean, obviously most places have a return window that you can send it back in. So you could always try it out, but I'm just letting you know, 128 gigabytes of storage, 6 gigs of RAM in this phone right here. It's just a little bit of a bummer. I'm glad that it has a 3.5 millimeter headphone jack. It's USB Type-C. I'm glad they gave that to you. But you know what else Motorola did again? And I forgot to mention this. There's no speaker at the top. There's only a speaker at the bottom. So it's a single speaker. That's a bummer, guys. That is a bummer. I'll play you a video here. I'll go to my one of my videos. You know what? You'd think I know how to use the YouTube app, but clearly I don't. Here, we'll go to this one.
Great. You know, for me personally, here, let me pull up a...
Auto rotate sometimes doesn't work very well either. I'll throw that in there.
You know?
It's very like tinny sounding and it's kind of hollow. I don't know, guys. It's not a great speaker. It's okay. It's okay. It'll get the job done. I don't think it's a very good speaker. It's loud. Like that was piercing my ears, but not really in a good way. Unfortunately, it hurt a little bit when this phone is at the highest volume. It's just okay, guys. I'm sorry. I'm gonna have to say this is one of the most mediocre phones that Motorola has released in a while, and they're releasing a lot of phones. They're hitting us with a ton of phones, but unfortunately, I just can't recommend this at $300. I can only recommend it probably at around $199. I think this is a much better value at $199. So if you can get it through a, through Cricket or T-Mobile or Metro or whatever, if you can get a deal, they have some discounts. I'm sure they will. I think Cricket just got this phone. If you can find it for a cheaper price, I would say keep it under $200. For what you're getting with this, keep it under $200. Otherwise, I actually think Motorola will be releasing, I just saw in the news, they're releasing a Moto G Stylus 5G 2022, which will have a Snapdragon processor. And I think it'll have a similar design, maybe a little bit of a smaller screen and similar cameras, but it's going to have 5G and a Snapdragon processor. I think that's the one to wait for. So hold off a little bit, I think, on this one, unless you can get it for a cheaper price. But otherwise, I just have to say it's only just okay. It's just okay, guys. And I hate to say it, but Motorola's got to pick it up. They got to go back to their glory days because I think Motorola used to have some of the best budget phones on the market, and I think they're slipping. So we'll see what they come out with next. And if you guys have any questions, comments, please leave them below. Please subscribe to the channel. And let me know what you guys want to see next. Any particular phones you'd like to see. All right, guys. See you later.